In the warm waters off the Florida coast, a green sea turtle propels herself through the ocean with her large, paddle-like flippers. At 300 pounds and with a carapace that's almost 4 feet long, she's remarkably graceful. And today, she started an immense journey. She's leaving her feeding grounds to travel hundreds, maybe thousands of miles back to where she herself was hatched, where she'll mate and lay hundreds of eggs this season. It's a process that is filled with obstacles already, but for the past 60 years, nesting and survival into adulthood has been a minefield for the species. Decades of habitat loss, egg harvesting, and over-poaching by humans has dealt a catastrophic blow to green sea turtle populations. By the 1970s, their global numbers had declined by up to 67%. But today, the picture is very different. This is the story of that extraordinary rebound and the international effort to make sure it happened.
When we lose a species, we lose a little piece of ourselves. We lose a piece of our humanity, our dignity. When we can learn from our mistakes and see this creature that has been here long before humankind has been, by tens of millions of years, and give it a chance to do it as it has done as a species, we are the better for it.
Today, we'll hear this remarkable story from Jeff Corwin.
You likely know Jeff as the host of Emmy-winning shows like Wildlife Nation and Ocean Treks. He's a wildlife biologist, a television presenter, an author, and a passionate conservationist. Jeff has worked closely with sea turtles across the Americas and in the Caribbean. Welcome to Back From the Brink from Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. I'm Dr. Rae Wynn-Grant.
And I'm Peter Gross, wildlife expert.
And in each episode, we're looking at some of the most incredible comeback stories in nature and the people who made it happen.
Jeff Corwin has spent over 30 years working with sea turtles around the world. And in that time, he's watched something amazing happen. A species that was critically endangered when he started his career is now thriving. But before we get to the comeback, we need to understand more about this fascinating animal.
Welcome, Jeff Corwin. This is so exciting for me.
Thank you, Rae. I appreciate
Welcome to Back
that.
From the Brink.
Yeah.
And, you know, we could talk about pretty much any species of animal with you. I mean, you've seen almost all. But I actually am very glad that you're going to talk to us about green sea turtles and the trajectory they've had over time.
Sure.
And one of the reasons I'm so stoked is because just last December, I had my first experience with a green sea turtle. I was in Costa Rica with Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, protecting the wild. We were doing all kinds of stories, but we were also looking at the different species of sea turtles in that area. And so I got to actually see some up close for the first time, which was really excellent. So I want to know, why is this the species we're talking about? Like, what is it about them that gets you so excited?
Well, I love sea turtles. And as a kid growing up in New England, we didn't see a lot of sea turtles.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And when I was a little boy, my dad was a Boston police officer, and he would drop me off at the New England Aquarium. And they were like, who's this little 7-year-old, 8-year-old kid here every weekend? And I knew all the names of the creatures. And before you know it, I was helping them do health assessments on their only sea turtle, which is Myrtle the turtle. And she is still there today.
Is she?
She's one of the oldest, giant, well-fed, Rubenesque sea turtles you'll ever see. And she's thriving there at the New England Aquarium. But since then, I've had a chance to work with sea turtles all around the world. And I've worked with almost all the sea turtles.
So, okay, for many people out there who are not like you and me and kind of in it with wildlife all the time, a sea turtle is a sea turtle is a sea turtle. So can you talk to me about what a green sea turtle looks like? Is it kind of like how a brown bear is actually brown? Or is it more like how a blue whale is like kind of blue, but a little bit more gray and dark? Like, what does this green sea turtle really look like?
Well, they don't look green at all.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
So do you know why they're called green sea turtles?
I don't.
Because of their meat. Because when you would eat the flesh, the muscle tissue and fat tissue is green because of all the foraging. They forage in a lot of alginous type material, and they're absorbing that chromatophore type, the pigments. They're absorbing that.
The fact that green sea turtles are named for the color of their meat explains why some of their population crashed. Over the course of Jeff's career, he's been a witness to the sea turtle's journey and the many factors leading to the crash and the comeback.
In my career, I've seen the arc of sea turtles. So I'm going on over 30 years in my career. And when I began my career, sea turtles were very critically endangered. And now I can see sea turtles when I'm out fishing in the summer off Massachusetts. We have sea turtles.
No, I didn't know it was that good.
Yes. So green turtles were critically endangered, loggerheads critically endangered, leatherbacks, all the sea turtles were critically endangered. Some now are endangered, but like loggerheads have drifted their way into threatened status. And green turtles are probably, many scientists would say, are no longer threatened. They're very abundant. And a lot of that came down to was eliminating the hunting of sea turtles because they were a food, and they still are a food for many people around the world, including Costa Rica. And having this global mission to make people want to protect them, have them sort of be ambassador species that we can love, and then protecting and restoring habitat and protecting the oceans where they foraged is what allowed us to bring them back. And if you were to go to Boca Raton, for example, 40 years ago, they had a dearth of sea turtles. Just a couple would come up and nest. But now, Boca Raton, Florida, is probably the most important nesting site for sea turtles, especially loggerhead sea turtles. But green turtles have made an extraordinary recovery. So in the short term, in the midterm, sea turtles are doing incredibly well. The long term, we don't know because they're facing other challenges. But where I live in New England, because our waters have gotten so warm, and also because they are cleaner than they have been in 100 years. Boston Harbor was the dirtiest modern urban waterway in the world.
I believe
it's now the cleanest modern waterway.
Way to go, Boston.
Brought back the right whales, it brought back turtles that could migrate up because it doesn't get cold. But eventually it does get cold and they get cold stunned. So we have a whole sea turtle hospital in New England now that back in the day would get 5 patients a year. And now they get thousands of patients a year. And the other challenge with sea turtles is because the sand is warmer, nests with many species, including green sea turtles, are hatching out about 90% female.
Oh, interesting, because the temperature it's like kind of the incubation temperature helps determine the sex of the animal.
Hotter means girls, and colder means guys. And then it's reversed with crocodilians.
Because why not?
I mean, why not?
Because that's just how nature is.
So I don't know how you fix that problem. So on the short term, they're trying to do things like regulate the nest temperature, but truly recovered species are when we can sort of step back and say, like wild turkeys, you're doing it on your own now. You're doing good. Or coyotes or other species, American alligators, bald eagles, species that were once almost extinct, but now have recovered to the point where they are doing it on their own.
The Endangered Species Act gave the sea turtles legal protection, but law alone doesn't save a species. What happened in Costa Rica showed what protection actually looks like on the ground, and who has to be a part of it.
Animal Planet, we'd go to a market and buy these sea turtles and release them and go out with this guy to buy sea turtles. And Costa Rica, their nesting green turtles and their loggerheads and their leatherbacks had largely crashed because people were both eating the turtles and eating the eggs.
Wow.
And once they protected those beaches, they now have so many sea turtles that they will say to the local population, please don't eat the sea turtles, but we have managed these nests so well, you can have some of the eggs.
Mm-hmm.
You get to have 20% of the eggs.
Mm-hmm. That really speaks to some great recovery, because allowing people to use these natural resources in their traditional way is fair, and also speaks to how resilient some of these species really can be if they have the right intervention.
Right. And with sea turtle eggs, there's a lot of cultural importance, especially in Latin America.
Mm-hmm.
They would just go and dig up all the eggs. They just didn't have a chance. And once those nests stabilized, they were like, it's okay, we can share this resource because we're already beating the odds, because it already is a game of numbers for sea turtles. Like if you're lucky, 1 in 10,000 will come back as an adult.
Walk me through that life cycle from where it's born.
When the mom, she comes out and she excavates that nest out to deposit her eggs, and during that season, she'll do multiple nests, and she'll do like a decoy nest to kind of sloppy, that kind of fool the animals.
Clever.
The idea is you do multiple nests so your entire clutch isn't lost.
Mm-hmm.
And then, she's laying between 30 and 70 eggs.
Okay.
A little bigger than a ping pong ball. And then she goes back to sea. When she comes out to nest, she is nesting on the very beach where she was born.
Amazing.
Where her life began.
Mm-hmm.
And she is the only time a sea turtle, for the most part, with few places like Hawaii will have this phenomenon of sea turtles that actually will sleep on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
Most sea turtles become pelagic. A sea turtle born that hatches out on Florida may find its way. We've tracked them to the coast of Africa.
Oh my gosh.
Sea turtles from Africa have shown up feeding in the Horn of Cape Cod, Massachusetts.
Incredible.
So they are incredibly adaptive of using the ocean's currents to go from A to B, or go from the New World to the Old World.
And we can find them in all of the oceans, essentially, right?
We even have some sea turtles that go into the Arctic.
What?
We think of sea turtles as being cold-blooded and not being warm-blooded, being endothermic, but they are the only turtle that is megathermic. Because they are so big, they are like their own they're a closed-loop energy system. So the nest is laid there, and she will go back to sea, and only the females will come out. Males will spend their whole lives in the ocean.
At sea. Isn't that something?
And when they hatch out, if they're lucky enough, if they're that 1 in 10,000 that survive the flood, that survive that high tide, that survive the coyotes or the raccoons, that survive the ghost crabs and all the fish that will eat them, then they'll come back 20 years later. It will take 2 decades for that mom to come to the beach, excavate that nest out, and bring that next generation in. So that's kind of how the cycle works.
The recovery of the green sea turtle didn't happen by accident. It happened because people decided it would. But the threats that nearly wiped them out haven't disappeared, and some new ones have arrived.
So green sea turtles were listed on the endangered species list. And that made a big difference, at least in the U.S. and in North America, in their protection. And and I think it also made a difference worldwide.
It did, because they were protected internationally, the IUCN and other groups. And there was there's still places where people eat green turtles and other sea turtles. The green turtle is the one that's actually eaten the most. People don't eat leatherbacks.
And they're eating this green meat.
Yeah. But
it's
like, that's what they say is, I've been to places where I've seen it being cooked in the streets of Indonesia and other places. But that was the most hunted sea turtle. They would hunt them for their eggs. And sometimes they would just literally get them all on board, cut them open, remove the eggs. And you look at those old National Geographic photos, and you don't really see that anymore. But they still face future challenges. One is a warming world.
Yeah.
And how do we combat that? And the other are plastics.
Okay. Talk to me about plastics in the ocean.
Yeah. We dump 10 billion pounds of plastics every year into our oceans.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see that as blue as a beautiful bluebird morning in New England. I've been to the Trash Pacific Gyre, and I've seen that, and where you see something that looks like an island that is hundreds of miles in size of this gyro of trash that has all come together. And there are places where beautiful Bali, for example, you go there and they have to every day, because people have spent all this money to be a tourist in beautiful Bali, they have to come in with excavators and front end loaders every morning just to clean the trash off the beach. And that is a preventable thing. It is something we could mitigate. So that's the good news. If we decided we could eliminate almost all of the plastic trash that goes into our oceans, there's a way we could manage that. But it's been documented that one big landscape plastic bag, those plastic bags that's really tough.
Yeah.
Can kill 5 individual sea turtles before it's broken up enough into little pieces that it could pass through. And I have been to so many sea turtle hospitals where that is it. So you have them eating plastics, and then off Florida, boat strikes. Big problem. And then they have diseases that may be the result of climate change, may be the result of pollution. They have it's a papilloma type virus where they get these tumors, and they'll often get them in and they'll remove the tumors and stuff. So they have challenges. But overall, I don't like to look at things as good news or success. I would say it's a promising story.
Okay.
It's a hopeful story. We are at a place of uncertainty and hope with green sea turtles and all the other sea turtles that we have out there. What I would argue, we are there where we have this out of sight, out of mind. Oh, we fixed it.
Sure.
We live in a world now where, whether you like it or not, in the last century, humankind has consumed 70 to 80% of all our planet's nature. We, whether we like it or not, have been given this responsibility to be our planet's stewards.
Yeah.
And that is something that will always require vigilancy.
The way I'm interpreting what you're saying is that if you are committed to protecting sea turtles or wildlife, nature at all, it's not a single decision. So it's not just choosing a paper straw over a plastic straw. It's not the right thing to get your paper straw and then the next car you buy is a huge gas guzzler, right? It is a lifetime kind of readjustment and commitment to these better environmental practices. It is the way you vote. It is the community that you live in. It is,
the
bringing
businesses you support.
Businesses you support.
Commerce.
It's bringing that reusable bag and eliminating single-use plastics. It's talking to your friends and family who might not be politically activated to, research their candidates. It's the way you travel. It is this commitment, and it's not too hard. That's not to say it's overwhelming and it's too hard. It actually can become.
If it is too hard, you can't do it. It's not. It's not sustainable. So it has to be something that you can achieve reasonably in your life. It's like the 5% rule. It's 5% of everything in your life to give, to take, to manage, time, talent, treasure. It's that 5%. If everyone did that, that makes a big difference.
Conservation classifications tell us where a species stands. They don't tell us how it got there. Jeff has been on the ground for 3 decades, and his stories say more than status reports ever could.
I've always believed in these classifications that we have, endangered, critically endangered, vulnerable, least concerned, threatened, least concerned, et cetera. I think it really helps us to triage, conservation work. And at the same time, I think you've made this point, it doesn't necessarily point us to the future. So when we have an animal that is of least concern, they are abundant, maybe they've gone through a lot, but they've arrived at this place where they're doing pretty well, it doesn't actually secure them for a future of abundance. And so I appreciate people like you who have this articulation for, the work isn't done yet.
And you have to remember is that creatures that are critically endangered today or extinct were once abundant.
Abundant. There you
Passenger pigeons were abundant. The heath hen was very abundant. And that's what created conservation when we wiped out wild turkey. So again, a sign of success, like where green turtles are today. If you went to New England 100 years ago, there were no wild turkeys. They were eaten up. There were very few white-tailed deer. And now these are very abundant species and very abundant resources. And there are places now where turkeys are now worth thriving, but then they're in trouble again because of bird flu and other things. So you're right. We're never really out of the woods where humankind envelops everything with such a completeness. We constantly have to be vigilant. But yes, we have gotten to a point where species like green sea turtles, which were on the brink of disappearing, have recovered swimmingly. And that is something I have experienced in my own life.
You have been on TV speaking about the power of nature and wildlife conservation for decades, and you've changed so much. You've been hugely influential. Is there a particular sea turtle story that you'd like to share with me that just stands out, either from filming or something that happened off camera?
There have been so many sea turtle stories, some mishaps.
Oh.
So we had this sea turtle, this big Ridley sea turtle, probably weighed about 100 pounds, and it had lost all 4 of its flippers.
Poor thing.
So we had drained its enclosure to clean it, and I was going to go grab the turtle. I was talking to my cameraman. I was leaning on the edge of this thing. It's about chest high, and the sea turtle, the water is gone. And this is about half the size of this room. And without any flippers, that sea turtle managed to come over and bite off the tip of my toe.
Oh my God.
And I wheeled it in pain.
I shouldn't laugh.
And I was like, oh my gosh. And I turned around, there's blood everywhere, and this sea turtle trying to eat my foot. And so
I can't even imagine how it's moving
you have like
towards
one
you.
toe that's the longest. It was like whatever toe, and it like cut off the tip of it. And so that I was like, man, you're one determined turtle. And then, so that was one story. And then the other story was I was in Borneo, and I'd waited all night for this nest to hatch out. We were going to film it hatch out. And lo and behold, it starts to happen, and you see them coming out. And it was a sunrise coming up, and they're going in. It was so beautiful. We're filming it up. And there was and then they're all gone. And then I look at the nest, and there's this one straggler, and its flipper is not deformed, but it's just not right. And it's just the straggler. And you just know it's probably not going to make it. And it was really very emotional for me to watch this thing I'm trying to keep up with the other guys. And that was like emotional for me to see that.
Yeah.
And so that was one incredible moment. Or dealing with these cold, stunned sea turtles that have come to New England to eat the bounty of plenty in the oceans. And then winter comes later, but it does come, and they get cold snapped. And all of these people, little old ladies coming up, and we found the sea turtle, and it was dead, and we brought it back to the center, and we had it there, and it was completely cold. It was as cold as the ice. It had no heartbeat. It wasn't breathing. And the scientist said, I like to wait, but we went back the next day, and it had a heartbeat. It was that determined, and we released that turtle back to the wild many months later. So that's the resiliency of nature.
The comeback is real, but ask Jeff Corwin why it matters, and the answer has nothing to do with data.
I just months ago, again in Costa Rica, was waiting on this beach with my co-host, and we were waiting for jaguars. And lo and behold, a wave sweeps up and there's a green sea turtle, female, obviously, coming onto the sand to lay eggs for her nest. I had been snorkeling with sea turtles before, and so I have seen them just be fast,
Right.
just super fast in the water and agile and just amazing, like hard to keep up with. And she comes in on this wave, riding the wave pretty fast, and then kind of splat on the sand. And then suddenly I see this massive body just, using both of her flippers. And to me, this is a bit of, anthropomorphizing.
I know where you're going with this.
The animal, it seemed like she was exhausted and just kind of, I'm a mother myself, just mom to mom. I was thinking to myself, she's so tired and she's just, trying to get from the shore into the brush where she can, lay these eggs. And it just took her like 10 minutes, to get somewhere where if she was swimming would have been seconds.
Right.
And I just had this compassion and empathy for the sea turtle in that moment, thinking to myself, what a labor of love, because there are predators on this beach, there are humans on this beach, there are seagulls and, all kinds of things to eat her babies or to bother her. And yet she has to make her way with her heavy body to lay the eggs and then make her way back. And I was I just felt like so much compassion for that experience and for the fact that sea turtles have been perpetuating their species for millennia, in the same way, but with the extreme effort.
Hundreds of millions of years. That sea turtle is when she comes up, this is a creature that's designed to have buoyancy, where all the heaviness of being a 200-pound animal
disappears
in the water.
Yeah.
But then it's like landing on a planet of all that gravity. It has to come out without, with that heavy gravity and fight with the sand and the bugs. And then
they don't have feet.
The dryness of the
claws.
eyes. And then she has to excavate a hole that takes some hours to create this pit that's 3 feet deep, and then give birth. Literally, you can hear them. They sigh and they heave, and then she has to go back to the sea, and she's coming to the very place where her mother brought her into. Dad, he's gone, but she does all that work. But then she is done, and they are on their own. It's a game of numbers.
Yeah.
She doesn't need 70 to survive. She needs just one to survive. And that one to survive may be in her, 2 or 3 times in her entire life when you think about it.
Right.
That's how it works.
It's really difficult, I think, to be in the presence of a sea turtle and not feel impacted by it somehow. And now that we have so many more sea turtles, because conservation has been working, the public has gotten on board, policies have been put in place, we can keep this species or all of these species alive and around forever.
It's the reward of investing our time and our energy and our resources to bring this species back. Because when we lose a species, we lose a little piece of ourselves.
Yeah.
We lose a piece of our humanity, our dignity. We have allowed under our watch to lose something that we've been charged to protect as a steward. When we can learn from our mistakes and see this creature that has been here long before humankind has been, by tens of millions of years, and give it a chance to do it as it has done as a species, we are the better for it. So yeah, it's pretty incredible to see that. And sea turtles are a big part of us. And the other thing that I have come to learn, I think back in the old days, we kind of science and I think it just made it easier to harvest things. We took away emotion from them, complexity. We took away any idea of thinking, and we just say they're hardwired to be. It's all driven by instinct. Well, we now know that especially turtles are far more complex behaviorally. There's stories of sea turtles that have had bonds to people. I have been with sea turtles that I'm like, this creature has taken a shining to me. And I'm not being anthropomorphic. The more you study them, the more we don't know what's going on inside of them.
Sure. That is such a perfect way to end because it offers us so much interest in what happens next. There's so much more to discover and to know about them. Thus, we can't wait to see how good it can get with sea turtles around the world.
Yeah, in a world where there's not a lot of good news, this is a good news story. It's also a gateway animal. It's a creature that can be a part of your life in a meaningful way, that can be your gateway to developing a connection and a relationship with our natural world.
Jeff Corwin, I have to thank you for coming on to Back From the Brink and talking to us about how sea turtles have come back from the brink and how we are responsible for their future moving forward. It has been an amazing conversation, and I have to thank you so much.
Thank you. It was fun.
From the edge of extinction to beaches full of nests, from boats loaded with harvested turtles to Boca Raton, becoming one of the most important nesting sites on Earth. The sea turtle didn't just survive, it became proof that when people choose to protect something, nature will do the rest. Green sea turtles have been making this journey for hundreds of millions of years, long before humans arrived on these shores. They're still here because of laws passed, beaches protected, and communities that decided this animal was worth fighting for. The work isn't done, but out there, the turtle is still swimming free in the wild oceans once again. This is Back From the Brink from Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom.
If you loved this episode and it sparked something in you, please follow or subscribe, leave a review, and send this episode to the turtle lover in your life. I'm Dr. Rae Wynn-Grant, and I'll see you next time.